In this week's episode of Berserk, Guts finally has a good opportunity to test out his brand new, newly forged Dragon Slayer blade, and he uses it to kick some Kushan ass. We also get to see that Casca has been saved by Luca, a prostitute with a heart of gold. The opening sequence of this week's episode with Guts taking on the Kushan army was pretty damned metal. Super violent, super impactful, and exactly what I wanted to see from the series. Also demonstrating that Guts has some pretty awesome fighting skills. Not just being able to swing his sword around, which is massively heavy, but being able to use it in a number of interesting ways, aside from just simply cracking skulls and hacking off limbs. I love the scene where he goes up against the Kushans for the very first time when they run at him and they all jump up in the air and he just swings his sword once and they all just explode in mid-air. I like when they all try to corner him and attack him at once, and what he does is he takes his Dragon Slayer blade, sticks it in the ground, and propels himself upward to not only dodge all the attacks, but to come back down with twice as much force, crushing his foes. Now, why exactly is Guts just indiscriminately killing all of these people? Well, aside from the fact that they are simply ambushing him, at the beginning of the episode, we are reintroduced to the character of Isidro, the would-be thief and swordsman, who is very enamored by Guts, mostly just because of how badass he is. And Isidro's been working with this other group of mercenaries, trying to gather food for them, and basically he's trying to play them and get all of their food from them, and as they're about to kick his ass, the Kushan Empire just shows up like freaking ninjas and starts tearing up the place. That's when Guts arrives and starts doing what he does best, cracking skulls. We also get to spend a little bit more time with Mozgus the Inquisitor, and we get to see how incredibly insane he is. What I really love about his character is how switch he can change on a dime, where in the first half of the episode there's all of these peasants who are suffering, they need food, they need medicine for their children, and Mozgus is actually sympathizing with them, but because of the lengths that they went to, they're going to have to go through some pretty extreme torture, and before they can actually be healed, they have to go through this gauntlet of hell, which just looks absolutely terrifying, to say the least. They bring all of these people down to this inner dungeon where all of his torturers work, where people are just flayed open, they are hit with whips, they're covered in spikes, they have to sit on these chairs that are covered in spikes, there's a dude whose head is quite literally being crushed by a vice. It's just disturbing, especially for the young mother who seems like she's going to be tortured with hot coals. The scene here is incredibly intense because, of course, when Farnese sees all of this, she tries to look away, but then you have freaking Mozgus, who just gets right up in her face. He starts to go all crazy again and says, "This is an integral part of the Holy See. This is what we do. It's all a part of it. Get used to it." And how could I forget the real formal introduction of Luca, who did appear in the last episode, but here we really get to see what she's all about. She's the leader of this group of whores, or prostitutes. Basically, that's all they can do to stay alive, and she's actually with one of her customers who goes by the name of Jerome, who also happens to be a part of the Holy See as well. Just like in the manga version, there's a really funny scene where while they're having sex, Casca just pops her head in out of nowhere, and it really freaks him out. Probably the fact that, one, she's just sort of mentally ill, and two, she looks like a mummy. While Luca and her friends don't exactly like being prostitutes, unfortunately for them, business is good, and that keeps them very busy, which means she's not always going to be able to watch Casca, so she actually informs one of her other subordinates by the name of Nina to look after Casca as they go to this river. Unfortunately, when they go down there, they're not only at the Tower of Conviction, but they also happen to be next to a bunch of demons which are getting ready to attack them and rip them to shreds. At the very end of the episode, we get to see that Isidro has been following Guts for a couple of days, intrigued by his massive sword, and even tries to steal it. Unfortunately, that thing's just too damn heavy. It's basically just a giant iron slab. There's no way that he can pick it up. And I love how Guts just sort of effortlessly just picks it up, no problem, puts it right back in its holster. Love him or hate him, Isidro is going to be one of those characters who is going to be sticking around for quite some time. In fact, he's going to be the next member of Guts' brand new party, with Puck being the comic relief and Isidro basically being the less comic relief. I really like this, though. In a way, it's almost as if Guts is sort of rebuilding his family after the one that was lost in the past. He's a little reluctant, of course, to have some brand new comrades, but you can see that it actually does sort of put him at ease. That is until they're suddenly attacked by a bunch of demons, which are these weird dudes who are rolling around in wheels. Seem familiar? These might actually be the spirits of the people who were killed in the last episode, or at least something very similar to them. All I know is it leads to a scene with Guts getting ready to destroy all of them as we fade to black, getting ready for next week's episode, which I cannot wait to see because the preview shows that we are finally going to see the Skull Knight in the series. And the Skull Knight is my favorite character from the series. Why? Just look at him. He's a chromed out skull badass. He's awesome. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Berserk? This is still a pretty decent adaptation of the Tower of Conviction arc from Berserk. They are making a few small, minor changes in terms of like what they're actually showing, but still this is a decent adaptation right here. It's just like it leapt right off of the pages. And this was a pretty good episode right here. I loved the action scene at the beginning. It's kind of hard not to. I especially love the music cues, getting that classic music from, what's his name? I cannot remember his name. The guy who composed the music for the original Berserk anime series. It just brings so much life to these action scenes and makes it all the more distinctive and just feels so classic Berserk. Love that scene. Can't get enough of it. I ended up watching it like 3 times in a row just to see how cool it all looked. I really dug all of that. And then, of course, there's all the other stuff throughout the episode, which is basically just moving this arc along, introducing a few new characters, reintroducing us to the character of Luca and her taking care of Casca, which is going to be a very important plot point as we move into the next couple of episodes and even further into the Tower of Conviction arc. And I love how they're continuously beginning to build up Mozgus, with the first half of the episode, him actually looking like a really nice guy, and then when they go down into the torture chamber, he turns into a freaking demon from hell. Overall, this was a solid episode of Berserk. I really enjoyed it. Guts is going to get some brand new companions as we move forward in this very exciting arc right here. I cannot wait to see what they're going to do with the rest of it. I liked this episode right here. I mean, it wasn't a perfect episode. I still think some of the CG animation is kind of bad at times, and a lot of the times the characters straight up look like Muppets, if you know what I mean by that. Otherwise, this is a pretty decent adaptation of Berserk that I think all Berserk manga fans should definitely check out at least once, if only to finally see this arc animated for the very first time. But I myself, as a longtime reader of Berserk, am enjoying this adaptation for what it is, and I'm just loving every week. I cannot wait for every new episode, and that's why I love this one right here. I'm going to give this one right here a 4 out of 5. Another super solid episode of Berserk that did have some minor animation problems, but aside from that, this is still a solid adaptation of Berserk. Check it out, Berserk fans. You might see something you like. But if any of you did watch this week's episode of Berserk, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. Did you have a favorite scene from this episode? What did you think about Guts going up against the Kushans? What do you think of the character of Isidro? Do you think he's just an annoying kid character, or do you think he's going to grow into his own as the series goes on? Manga fans will know exactly what I am talking about. And what do you want to see from the rest of the brand new Berserk anime series? You guys are awesome. Thank you for watching this review. I really appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and all that jazz. Thank you guys again for watching. And as always, stay dandy, baby.